This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at a very affordable but pretty nice unlocked Android smartphone. This is the Alcatel OneTouch Idol 3. It's $249 unlocked. This will work on T-Mobile, AT&T, overseas on GSM, not Sprint, not Verizon. Sorry if you're Sprint and Verizon. Go grab a cup of coffee. Anyway, 7.4 millimeters thin, 5.5-inch Full HD IPS display, Snapdragon 615 octa-core 64-bit CPU inside, so that's not bad stuff. And we have a Sony 13-megapixel camera on the back. $249. I'm kind of sold already. We're going to look at it now. So this is the Alcatel Idol 3. And you know, there are a lot of Android unlocked smartphones on the market, quite a few of them brands you've never heard of from Chinese importers, a few that you have heard of, like OnePlus, for example, the OnePlus One smartphone. Alcatel is a pretty established name in the telecom industry. Besides doing all sorts of wireless infrastructure stuff, they also make phones. So it's a little heartening when you've got a phone from a company that, you know will probably exist tomorrow. In fact, for sure, they're going to exist tomorrow. For $249, you get a 5.5-inch display. You get this really slim design. You know, next to the Note 3, which was a pretty slim phone in its day, it actually looks downright skinny. It's also, relatively speaking, very light, despite the fact that it has a 2910 milliamp battery inside. Pretty impressive there. And, you know, unlocked affordable phones, they kind of look cheesy often. This one isn't too bad. It has an interesting finish here. You can see how it looks there when there's some light directly on it. It looks pretty understated. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the OnePlus One in the dark finish. Not the light colored one, but the dark one. It's classy, it's grippy, it's nice. So far, so good. Android 5.0 Lollipop, so the latest operating system on this. That's another thing often with budget phones, you get a really outdated operating system on there, no hope of an update. Well, you got it right there. Now it does have Alcatel's OneTouch launcher, as they call it, so they customize the UI a little bit. Actually, it's a pretty light touch of Android overall, but they do have their custom icons, which I personally don't like. Now, I'm kind of an icon Nazi. I'm very picky about it. It's hard to make good-looking icons. I always trust manufacturers to do the best job, but minor niggle, you can put a third-party launcher on there. Maybe you actually like the icons. They do preload a lot of software. Everything on the screen except for the benchmarks folder and Speedtest.net application were pre-installed. So you got Twitter, you got Mix, you got a sound recorder. Granted, that's useful, a little time application. The weather is cute, kind of. It's a little pop-up thing like this. WhatsApp is on here. You can uninstall all these. This is not like a carrier-branded phone where there's a lot of stuff on here you might not want that you can't uninstall, so you can remove it. There are 16 gigs of internal storage on this. So that's a pretty decent amount of room if you want to play some games and stuff. And interestingly, we have a little pop-out door here, the kind that you poke with the included poke tool or a paper clip for your micro SIM card, not nano, but micro, and also a stacked micro SD card. So it's too deep. The one that goes further in is the SIM card. The one that's closer to the end is your micro SD card. So you can expand storage as well. This runs on the Snapdragon 615, which is a mid-range octa-core CPU, which is 4 high-power, 4 low-power cores. So it doesn't mean 8 cores run at once. It means you get 1.5 gigahertz high-power cores, or you get the slower speed, low power for less demanding tasks. It's a moderately capable CPU. Most of the time the phone feels decently fast, but I do notice it lagging a little here and there, and I don't think that's because of the so-called OneTouch launcher, because again, it's a pretty light touch on top of Android here. In fact, you can see like the settings tray works just like Lollipop would, the second pull down to get to your quick stuff, settings right there. A couple of neat features. You have a few gestures, like you can tap to turn it off, tap to wake it up again. Otherwise, pretty much vanilla Android going on, and decent speed. Now, there are some competitors. We have the aging but still powerful OnePlus One right here, and also a big phone. It's a heavier phone. Now, granted, this guy is old, but my God, after how long has this been out? You can finally get one of these without having to enter their lottery system to buy one. So there you have it. This one's $50 more. It is a bit faster. It's an older generation, but it's still a flagship generation Snapdragon 801 CPU in this guy here. Both of them offer LTE. Now, this has LTE 4G for both AT&T and T-Mobile. So for those of you who are familiar with bands used by cellular carriers, we've got everything that you need covered on this. GSM quad band, the usual quad band there. For 3G, we have 850, 1900, 2100, and 1700. 1700 there for T-Mobile. That's HSPA+. For LTE, we have bands 2, 4, 5, 7, 12, and 17. So you can see we've got everything covered we need for T-Mobile and AT&T, and that's 150 megabit per second downlink speed, not the faster 300 you see on flagship phones. I mean, something has to give, right? This is $249. This is not a $500 or $600 phone. And for those of you who are on a budget and you know you want a phablet, the Samsung Galaxy Note 3 is still available on a lot of carriers, obviously not unlocked, but here's the size difference. So you can see they're not that far off in terms of footprint, are they there? But the thickness is really noticeable here. So it feels a lot easier on the hand to hold the OneTouch than it does the Note 3. So this display is 1920 by 1080, 5.5 inch. It's an IPS display. It's decent. At lower brightness levels, it can look a little towards the pink side. You don't look at it and say, oh, wow, like you would a Super AMOLED display from Samsung. Even I slightly prefer the HTC One M9. Again, you get what you pay for, but it's still a nice, sharp IPS display, so it's certainly not hard on the eyes. That's sufficient pixel density, even at 5.5 inches, that everything is going to look sharp. Colors are pretty good, not wildly saturated. Now, I have to say about the display is it's quite bright. Right now, you can see it's not set that high, and also we have ambient brightness enabled. So as you can see, and one thing I like is that even with ambient brightness enabled, you can set a relative level of brightness as you want, and if you turn it off, it can get really crazy bright too. It's very viewable outdoors, so definitely a good job with the display overall. I mean, I guess it'd be the super most color saturated, but contrast is good, brightness is good, sharpness is good. One thing I do like is the JBL stereo front-facing speakers. You don't have to get an HTC One just to get front-facing speakers or a Nexus 6, and we'll play those in a bit. Really quite loud and fairly full too, so again, for a budget phone, that's a pretty nice touch. Also, on the front, we have an 8 megapixel camera. That is certainly higher than usual resolution, and not only that, it takes pretty good shots too. In fact, let's take a look at that. Call this the stress test. This was taken in extremely low lighting with some backlighting, so that's about as bad as it would get. Nothing takes a good shot here. Now we'll flick over to the good lighting. And there we have a picture taken in good lighting. A lot of detail. It looks more like it was taken with the rear camera. You can see all the detail in my fleece sweater there, the bricks on the background. You can easily see the earring I'm wearing. For a front camera, I'm pretty darn impressed. Now the rear shooter is a 13 megapixel with the Sony sensor. You know, the Sony sensor does a good job. We've seen that on the likes of the LG G3, even the G Flex 2, a couple of pretty good camera phones. The color balance, well, it's a little bit Technicolor, isn't it? That, taken on a cloudy day particularly, that's pretty darn zingy, but of course you can adjust your color saturation with an image editor if you want, and I think probably most people actually like a lot of color. And there's a reasonable amount of detail here without too much artifacting. So for a phone in this price range, I mean, seriously, it's outperforming the HTC One M9 there. And here's a 1080p video, which is the highest resolution you can shoot at. Pretty smooth and stable. Now I have to say the audio recording is pretty abysmal on this. You could barely hear me. It's pretty muffled. Now this is pretty neat. This is a color that usually blooms on most digital cameras, even regular cameras, not just camera phones. And you can actually see the water on the petals there. A lot of strong detail, not overly sharpened. A little bit of whiting out on the flowers, but then that flower was actually also fading. You can see the detail here in the inside of the flower. I'm pretty darn impressed with this. Now for low light photography, it does have a flash. This was taken without the flash on because the cat would not forgive me. Really dark room, cat in a dark brown bed. It's not too bad. It's not, oh my God, fantastic, but that's actually not so bad. There's some detail on his fur. And here's a low light video. Frame rate is not the highest in low light, as you can see there. It doesn't look that fast. Oh, isn't he cute though? So overall, pretty good job there. Now the camera application itself is pretty intuitive. Obviously you got your shutter button right there. You have your switch to video mode. You can do tap to focusing right here. Flash control, switching between the front and rear camera, and auto mode, HDR on off. It doesn't do auto HDR, you just have HDR on off. Panorama mode, manual should you want. Time lapse mode, barcode scanner, beauty face, face beauty, however you want to say it there. So that'll smooth out the wrinkles and hide the zits. Control for your resolution, GPS tagging, shutter sound, exposure, whether you want to record sound such as it is. Gets the job done. Nice enough camera. Call quality on the phone is good, not fantastic. Incoming voice and outgoing voice sound, I wouldn't call them muffled, but not really super great dynamic range. Volume is okay. It's a decent voice phone. It's not a fantastic voice phone. As you can see here, they went pretty much with the standard Google Lollipop 5 skin. And in terms of speed tests, we just reset our speed test, but we have a few right here. And you can see we have the LTE indicator up here, so we do indeed have LTE. We'll just run a new test right now so you can see. To jump to the punchline, on both AT&T and T-Mobile, we've seen pretty much par for the course, very good data speeds. Well, that's really fantastic data speed right there. Good times. So compatible, yes. Good data speeds, clearly. And our upload speeds are also going to be rocking. So how about benchmarks? Well, this is a mid-range, latest generation CPU, so you're going to see mid-rangey numbers. So the graphics number is a little below mid-range. This is obviously Ice Storm Unlimited test. This is a 3D Mark test. You can see it scored 7,775. The fastest phone score, 20 to 25,000. So that would be the weaker link here in our benchmarks. Now let's take a look at Antutu, and you can see where it's scored in Antutu, 31,006. With Antutu for the fastest phones, we see 45, sometimes up to 55,000 for a score. So that's not a bad score. It's obviously not class leading. And for Geekbench 3, single core 662, usually we see around 1,000 or a little bit better on the faster phones, sometimes as high as 1,400, 1,500. And the multi-core test, it scored 2516. For SunSpider, the JavaScript test, 1188 with the WebKit web browser. This has both the WebKit web browser and Chrome. Chrome typically scores a little slower for the JavaScript test, where lower numbers are better. So it scored 1376. Fastest phone score 400 to 500. Average phones score around 1200 or so. So that makes it pretty average. So not a bad performer. Not going to be flagship level. Again, it's not a flagship price phone. So what do you expect? So how about ports and controls? First of all, I just want to say that I kind of really like what they did here. They've got a gray matching matte finish that matches the back of the phone, sandwiched between the two little ridges of chrome. It's nice looking. So we got our micro USB down here, obviously one microphone. One thing that's kind of weird is what they did is they put the power button on the left side. Usually on most phones is on the right, so I just keep reaching to the wrong side. You'll get used to it, and since you have double tap to wake and double tap to sleep, it's not the end of the world. Headphone jack up top right there, and here are our volume controls. Fairly ergonomic, fairly well laid out, no complaints there. Other features include dual band Wi-Fi 802.11ac, Bluetooth 4.1, low energy, NFC, GPS with a GPS, and an FM radio. The 2910 milliamp battery is sealed inside on this design. And that's a pretty large capacity battery. Now we do have a 5.5-inch display, a moderately powerful CPU, not the top tier one. And so far I've found, as you might expect, that with average use this will last through the day. It hasn't been a super duper long life phone for me. We do have it on LTE with Wi-Fi also active. Pretty good strong LTE signal for both AT&T and T-Mobile, so that's not an issue there. So it's got decent battery life. It's not super stellar, so if you think you're gaining something by having a lower power CPU there, so far not so much. So we're going to test out the speakers and the web browser, and here's the standard Google keyboard on here. If you want a different keyboard, you can go ahead and put it on there yourself. So the colors are reasonably good. The sharpness is pretty nice. I mean, it's hard to fault IPS off angle. Still looking good. No color shift there. And let's play a video to see what the audio is like. I think it's very pretty. Maybe that's a girl thing. I don't know. Some of you guys don't like it as much. It's also available in gunmetal and have dark accents here. And the metal trim is actually a little different on each
Good sound, right?
It's also going to be a gold on gold model.
Well, we're a little over halfway for
If
volume.
you're picky about the feel of the phone in the hand and how slippery it is, well, try them all out in the store if available. Right now, this one is the most commonly available in stores, though. One side, we have the micro SD card slot, expandable storage still here. Good times. One thing that.
So definitely an adequate pair of speakers there. All right, so here we are playing some classic Dead Trigger to test gaming. Clearly, this can handle Temple Run, Plants vs. Zombies, Angry Birds. This is a bit more demanding, and it's doing good. It looks nice, too. The sitting duck scene here, pretty easy. You get the idea. The environment certainly looks good. The screen is sharp. Suitable for killing zombies. So there it is, Dead Trigger on the Alcatel OneTouch Idol 3.
So that's the Alcatel OneTouch Idol 3. You can order it online. You can visit Alcatel's website. You can go to Amazon. Pre-orders start April 21st, 2015, and should get in your hands sometime early May. And if you're looking for a budget phone that doesn't look cheesy, doesn't really cut serious corners, well, this is a nice phone for the price. And you get LTE 4G on T-Mobile and AT&T both. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit mobiletechreview.com for our full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.